A single painting wouldn't fire a bullet or stop at that. Yet, during World War II, one painting became the center of a fight to save not just art, but an entire way of life. In 1943, Allied commanders received an order that sounded strange on the surface. They were told to avoid bombing certain cultural sites unless absolutely necessary, even at great risk to military operations. This wasn't strategy. It was philosophy. General Dwight D. Eisenhower issued directives to protect Europe's heritage, as if it were part of what they were fighting to defend. National Gallery plus 1A painting, and many like it, had become more than pigment on canvas. It was a symbol. What civilization looked like. What was worth surviving the war. Thousands of lives were still at stake, yet Allied forces had been told to save culture if possible, even while bullets still flew. Harvard Magazine, this is the real story of how art became a battlefront of its own, and why one painting's survival meant so much more than you think. Hitler admired art, ironically, and he planned a museum he called the Fuhr Museum in his hometown of Linz, Austria. To fill it, Nazi units systematically looted museums, churches, and private collections across occupied Europe. NEH.gov, millions of items, paintings, sculptures, tapestries were stolen. Rembrandt, Vermeer, Michelangelo, Raphael. Millions of works of human history and expression were erased from their homes. Rare historical photos. The monuments men, unlikely soldiers. In 1943, the Allies created a unit of art experts pulled from museums, universities, and libraries. A civilian military unit called the Monuments, Fine Arts, and Archives section. They were soon nicknamed the Monuments Men, though many were women. National Gallery. These 345 museum directors, historians, architects, and art conservators were not trained soldiers. They didn't carry rifles into battle, but they did carry maps of cultural sites, lists of historic treasures, and the conviction that art matters to humanity. NEH.gov. Their mission was simple, terrifying, and almost unbelievable. Protect important works from Allied bombing. Find Nazi stolen art hidden across Europe. Return it to its rightful owners. Harvard Magazine. The painting that symbolized a culture among the most significant works at risk was Leonardo da Vinci. The Last Supper, a wall painting in Milan, Santa Maria degli Grossi, when the Allies prepared to bomb targets in Milan in August 1943. Local art experts and Allied officials surrounded the mural with sandbags, steel braces, and timber scaffolding. This massive protective effort literally held the wall up as the bombs fell around it. Hyperallergic when the dust settled, the Last Supper stood intact, while much of the church was destroyed. The painting survived not by accident, but by concerted action to save it hyperallergic. In another example, the Ghent altarpiece by Jen and Hubert van Eyck, a masterpiece of Northern Renaissance art, had been seized by the Nazis from Belgium. By 1945, the Monuments Men found it deep inside a salt mine in Altaussee, Austria, among over 6,000 other paintings hidden there by the Third Reich. Smithsonian Magazine. Half a century later, historians would call this one of the most important recoveries of the war. Not just for art history, but for the cultural identity of a continent. Smithsonian Magazine, a painting as a symbol of human value. These efforts weren't just about pretty pictures. These works had been at the heart of European culture for centuries. They told stories of faith, identity, creativity, and memory. Losing them would mean losing parts of what it meant to be human. The Monuments Men literally catalogued, boxed, and preserved millions of stolen works. Over 5 million pieces of European art and cultural heritage were protected, recovered, and eventually returned after the war. NEH.gov. This was one of the greatest cultural recoveries in history. So, how did a painting save thousands? Not by stopping bullets, not by redirecting armies. It saved lives of meaning. It preserved the culture families identified with. It kept stories alive that otherwise might have vanished under Hitler. As degenerate art policies. Policies that targeted not just human life, but the cultural soul of Europe itself. NEH.gov. When soldiers on both sides saw these works, masterpieces from centuries of human history, they were reminded of what was worth fighting, and what was worth protecting when peace finally came. The lesson: art isn't decoration. A painting isn't just a picture. In the darkest hours of human conflict, culture becomes something precious, something worth saving with your life. In World War II, one painting, The Last Supper, and many others like it, stood not only as a masterpiece of creativity, but as a testament to the idea that human identity matters, even in war. And that idea that culture itself deserves saving is perhaps the greatest legacy of them all.